As students get ready to return to classes in the coming weeks, we are checking in with school districts across mid-Missouri on how return plans are going. This morning, we are joined by Miss Sarah Marriott, who is the superintendent for the Boonville R-1 school district. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So first, can you kind of talk about what the options are for students or families in Boonville R-1 school district for the 2020-21 school year?
Yes, so our priority was to really provide options for families that worked well depending upon their circumstances, because we know that one model is not going to work well for all families. And so we are currently offering two choices for families. They can choose an in-person measure in which the students attend school beginning August 24th, and we've implemented many health precautions for that. Or if families aren't comfortable with that option, we also are going to offer a full 100% virtual online option for families to choose from.
Great. And can you talk a bit about the different tiers of in-person learning you'll have as well? I saw that in your plan online.
Yes, so we have implemented a tiered system depending upon the current circumstances in our county and our local school district regarding health. And so the first tier is that things resume as normal, and then moving on to the green tier, which is that where we're currently entering, in which we have in-person learning with health precautions. If things begin to deteriorate in our district or in our community, then we could potentially move to a yellow tier, which is a hybrid model of online learning and in-person learning, and all the way to the red level, which is full virtual instruction for all of our students.
Definitely makes sense. And will there be differences at different levels of schooling? So for high school or middle schoolers or elementary schools?
Well, I think certainly just the nature of those age groups in general provides some variation in their education. And so definitely in the elementary, we're going to try and maintain the cohorts of students in which they're not moving around throughout the building and mixing significantly, just to try and keep groups of students together. But then when you move to the middle school and high school, that's certainly a lot more difficult, because just the nature of their classes, that they all can't continue in the same cohort. So we're trying to implement some strategies that are appropriate for each of those grade levels.
Understandable. And for the last question for now, can you talk about the changes the district will be making to keep people safe from COVID-19? Are there health screenings in place, or what will be going on in the schools?
Well, certainly one of the things that we're going to be doing is implementing thermal scanners in all of our buildings. We feel that that's a health precaution that we can take to hopefully ward off any potential illness coming into our schools. We're going to be limiting visitors. We're increasing sanitation. We're installing bottle fillers at the district instead of water fountains, increasing the frequency of how often we clean, and then just a lot of other measures that have been recommended by our local health department and the CDC.
First, what is the plan for if someone does test positive for COVID-19 in a school?
Well, certainly we want to consult directly with our local public health department to take appropriate actions, initiate contact tracing if that hasn't already been done, instill and start the cleaning and disinfecting process for the spaces that that student or staff member has been in, and then also work to identify the next step. Do we need to close a classroom? Do we suspect that potentially it's just a few students or a staff member that's been impacted? Or do we need to look at more drastic measures and potentially close down an entire building? So it really depends on the circumstances regarding the positive test, but we will certainly work with our local public health department to take appropriate health actions.
Of course. And will masks be required for students or teachers? And if they are, will you be providing them?
So masks are expected for all staff members, and we will provide those for all of our staff members, as well as if they need a face shield or if they need any other special equipment so that they can do their job. For grades 6 through 12 students, they are expected because those students do not maintain a cohort setting in which they move around the building. And then in K through 5, they're not expected, but certainly if students would like to wear a mask, we're going to support that.
Understandable. And how will social distancing work in your classrooms?
Well, sure, that's a challenge, and I think that's a big question that a lot of people have. It's certainly a bit easier with older students because we can space them out, and they most often will stay where you assign them to. And with younger students, we're going to try those same strategies, knowing that we might need to take some additional steps, such as some additional smaller tables, or we might need to do some other things to try and keep them separated as best that we can.
Understandable. And then will there be any changes for attendance policies for students this year or sick leave for teachers as well?
Yes, certainly the attendance incentives that we normally have for students to encourage coming to school, those are going to be eliminated because we want to encourage any student or staff member that's not feeling well to stay home. That's going to be a must this year. And then with staff members, the same procedures. We'd want them to stay home if they're not feeling well. And then the federal government has enacted some additional legislation that provides some additional protections for staff members.
And how will that work with substitute teachers as well?
Well, substitutes on a typical year are always a challenge for school districts in trying to secure substitutes. So I know that this year is not going to be any different, and we're going to have additional challenges. So we're working hard now to try and at least line up a good substitute staff, and we're going to continue to work on those efforts, and hopefully our early planning will help be a proactive measure for us.
So first, what kind of events and clubs or sports will be allowed at the school, and how will they look a bit different this year?
Well, certainly a lot of those things are not determined at this point. We want to wait a little bit closer. Our plans are to go ahead and start athletic practices on August 10th. And then as we approach closer to games or events for athletics or activities, we're going to make those decisions at that time based on local health guidance.
Makes sense. And are there extra sanitization measures in place for this school year?
Yes, absolutely. So all of our janitorial and custodial staff have been trained, and they'll continue to undergo training on utilization of what chemicals, what materials that they need to use in the event, or just proactive measures that they need to take to maintain a sanitary environment. We're increasing the frequency. We've purchased different items that are specifically identified for these particular concerns, as well as just making sure we're trying to really hit some of those frequently touched surfaces, door handles, desks, all of those things.
Yeah, and will there be any adjustments in curriculum to catch up on subjects that might have been missed out on last year because of the pandemic?
That presents a whole new challenge because certainly our students are moving to a new grade level, and so they're not going to have that opportunity to go over that curriculum that they missed with their prior teacher, but their new teacher, their new class, they certainly will address the things that they can, try and spend some time so that students aren't missing essential skills, because that's important for us.
Great, definitely. And one last question I want to touch on. You have the deadline for virtual registration this week, right? Is that Friday? And do you have any advice for parents as they're trying to choose between virtual or in-person classes?
I think that's a tough decision for parents, and I just want to reassure parents that whichever option they choose, that's the right choice. And the district is going to support that for that family, because certainly we can't make that decision for families. We can provide some guidance, but families have to decide what's best for them. And it's going to be the right choice. And we are going to welcome our kids back to whichever learning environment they choose. And we are going to tackle this together.
Awesome. Great to hear. Well, thank you so much again for joining us this morning, Dr. Marriott. And we will be continuing to check back in with you as you guys return to school.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.